This episode contains brief discussions of sexual assault, which may be distressing to some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is always available. Go to findahelpline.com to access relevant services available in your country. Please take care while listening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Crime Family. I'm your co-host, AJ, and I'm here with my two sisters and co-hosts, Katie and Lisa. And for this week's episode, we are actually going to be talking about and revisiting a case that we covered extensively on the show before. So if you'll remember, one of our earliest episodes back in season 1, we covered the Adnan Syed case. And this week we are going to be revisiting it because there's been some new developments, not like super recent. These were a couple years ago developments, but they did just release a 5th part to a documentary series that was about the case. So it was the HBO docuseries, The Case Against Adnan Syed. And so I think the first 4 parts came out in like 2019 or something. And then the 5th part just came out in September, I believe. So we wanted to kind of get together and discuss that episode, but also the broader updates in general. I believe we also did like a bonus episode for the updates when they first happened in like 2022, like on the Patreon, but not on the main show. So we're actually going to talk about it for, the first time on the main show, all these updates. So I guess you guys kind of saw the, Katie and Lisa, you both watched the new episode of the docuseries. I guess what were your thoughts just right out of the gate about that? We'll obviously go into the specifics later, but
I'm just mad all over again about everything that happened. Yeah, I watched all of it all at once last night, and it was such a good documentary. But yeah, I still have so many questions again.
It always makes me think about why they were fighting so hard to keep him in there. Like, even when, like, the new district attorney, was it? Or whoever was fighting to get him out was, gonna look at the case, and if she said if the evidence pointed the other way, then she was gonna exonerate him. But there was, the original people that had put him away were, like, gonna fight that again. I'm just like, and they even asked the question, like, "Why do you think they're fighting so hard?" And she just like, "I don't even know. Like, there's something deeper going on here." And I was just like, it frustrates me because I don't even understand why they would fight so hard to, keep him in jail. Like, why? It's, like, personal to them.
Yeah, to me, it's not surprising that they would fight. I think you see it all the time. It's very uncommon for them to admit that they were wrong and they made a mistake. So I'm not surprised, but yeah, I am surprised. Like when the prosecutors is like when the state prosecutor's saying like we want to do this case again. That's kind of like I think that's kind of uncommon. So that was really lucky that the state prosecutor's like no, like this or the DA or whoever it was like this was done wrong.
yeah, I think, and I could maybe the people who were originally involved just didn't want any like re-examination. Is just going to expose their own corruption and how little investigation they actually did. So I guess they would have high motivations to not want anyone to talk about it again, probably. But yeah, so I guess just a little very, very brief recap of the case in case you need your memory rejogged, I guess, about the case. But this all centers around the murder of high school student Hae Min Lee. In January of 1999, Hae Min Lee went missing, and about a month later, her body was found in Lincoln Park. And this is in Baltimore, Maryland. And there was a very brief investigation, only about a month or so. And eventually, Adnan Syed, who was 17 at the time, was eventually arrested and charged for her murder. And he ended up going to trial and was convicted of her murder and was given a life sentence. But he has always declared his innocence. He has always, he never pled guilty. He's always been saying that it was a wrongful conviction, that he didn't do it. And so there has been like legal fights for, over 20 years to appeal and to get a new trial. And there's been, of course, the Serial podcast, which came out in 2014, was really what propelled this case, I think, to the mainstream. And then it was after that, there was the Undisclosed podcast, which was done by, Rabia Chaudhry and a couple of lawyers who really kind of went into more detail and kind of exposed all the stuff that Serial didn't get into, and kind of just expose even more corruption and everything about why Adnan was actually innocent. Flash forward to 2022. In September of 2022, Adnan was actually released from prison. There was the state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby. She was really kind of fighting for justice in this case, and she kind of reopened it. And there was enough reason to suggest that he shouldn't be in jail. There should be a new trial. So anyway, he was released in September of 2022, and even since then, it's been over 3 years now since he's been out of jail. There's still been like kind of ongoing legal battles because I mean, his release wasn't a declaration of innocence. They were just saying that he served his time. There wasn't enough evidence, or there should be a new trial. But they were kind of advocates for Adnan were trying to fight to be clearly fully exonerated and to be cleared from his record. And then there's been like legal fights with the family of the victim, Hae Min Lee, because their legal argument was that they weren't given enough notice about the hearing where Adnan was released. And so they were kind of putting up that legal fight, saying that they didn't want him released. They didn't think it was fair and all of that stuff. And so it kind of been going back and forth since 2022, but he has remained out of prison since 2022, which is very exciting development. So of course, even though Lisa said after watching it, she's pissed, but it did end up good for Adnan in the end. But it's still kind of an unsolved case now, because obviously if Adnan's out of prison and we all know he's innocent, then the question becomes, well, who actually is responsible? And I think the two biggest revelations from the documentary, the new part of the documentary, was this talk about two new potential suspects, or not even new suspects, but two other potential suspects. And that's kind of really what the bulk, I think, of what we're going to talk about today is who these two suspects are and kind of our thoughts on the theories about these two people. So we are going to kind of get into that.
Can I just ask something? Do we know who the two suspects are? I guess they didn't say, but they're alluding. I know
Yes.
one for sure was Alonzo Sellers, but who was the other one? Are they saying non?
Yes. No. So I'm actually going to get into who the second one
Oh,
is.
okay.
Because I think Katie might know. In our Patreon, the bonus one that we did, I did talk about this other person. But in the documentary, they didn't really go into that second suspect at all. They really just focused on one of the two suspects, which is Alonzo Sellers, which, if you're familiar with this case, you'll remember him as the person who found Hae Min Lee's body in February of 1999. And right from the get-go, I think his explanation of how he found the body was just obviously very odd and very weird. He said that he was on his way to work and he pulled over and like went into the forest to like take a piss or something, and I came across the body, and then obviously put in the 911 call. And it kind of unraveled for him a little bit since then, because in investigations, it kind of seemed like his car was eventually parked on the opposite side of the road from the direction of travel. He was less than a mile from work. And it was just very questionable. Why would he go like deep into the woods, like on this like unbeaten track and trail to where he eventually found the body? It just seemed like very odd. It wasn't just like off to the side of the road. He had to like go into the woods quite a distance. And yeah, so like the scenario that he describes and how he found it was kind of always under the microscope. He did have a history of like streaking, and he would like, go up to people, and he would just indecent exposure. And he does have a criminal record for charges related to that. So that was also a question too at the time of like, this isn't someone who would, why would he go deep into the woods to do that when he's normally just walking around naked or going up to people? Like, it's just very weird. And like I said, he was less than a mile from work, so he really had to pee that bad. He could just wait till he gets to work. I don't know. But anyway, so that was super weird. So Alonzo Sellers, he's kind of been obviously involved in this case since the very early days, since 1999. And police did give him a polygraph at the time that the investigation was going on. And he did fail the first polygraph that he was given. But then he said that he was just, distracted or something, and said that he wasn't in the right frame of mind. So the police actually allowed him to come in a second day and give a second polygraph. And the results of the second one, those are the ones that would always be used by the state's case. I don't know exactly what those results are, but probably more favorable. Maybe he passed that one. I don't know. But they kind of just shoved the first one under the rug and pretended it didn't happen. I think they wanted Sellers to pass the polygraph so that they could say he passed the polygraph. So that's why they gave him a second chance to do it. Then in the documentary, so the documentary actually starts, like the fifth part actually starts with the this man who like goes and like attacks this female postal worker. He's like a nude man who like just goes up to her and is like freaking her out, whatever. She takes a photo of him. She calls the police. And it turns out, and this was from I think 2020 or 2021. So like relatively recently or long after this case. And it turns out that this man is Alonzo Sellers. So he's still up, doing his own old tricks again, doing the same stuff he's always done. And that kind of leads into the new part of this documentary, and they do bring up a lot of very interesting things about Alonzo Sellers that kind of makes I'm sure all of us question him and kind of really focus on him again. So one of those things being that one thing I think it's Rabia that says in the documentary that the police actually, or it came out that he actually was discovered to have old newspaper clippings in his apartment. I think they were under his couch, and they were clippings from like 1999 and 2000, which is around the time of Hae's murder and the investigation and Adnan's trial and all of that stuff. They didn't explicitly say in any of the releases what the clippings were of, but and I think Rabia was just kind of, making an educated guess, like what else would be happening around that time that's relevant to him, the fact that he would have. So was he someone who was following the developments of the case super closely enough where he would keep all of these newspaper clippings? And if it was of this case and of the trial and everything, why would he care so much about it or like be following it that closely? So just really, really odd behavior. So that was one thing that really stood out to me initially. And then another thing that also came out in the documentary, which also was actually explained in the original motion. So in 2022, Marilyn Mosby, who is the state's attorney, she files a motion to vacate Adnan's sentence. And in that motion, it's like several pages long. She describes that there's 2 new suspects. And so a lot of this information is also in that filing as well. I don't think the newspaper clippings thing is, but this next thing I'm about to say is, so in the file, in the motion, it also describes how one of the suspects, who we know to be Alonzo Sellers, based on the documentary where they actually say it, he not only has a connection to where Hae's body was found, but he also has a connection to where Hae's car was found by investigators. So if you remember in this case, her car was found in a grassy lot, and a short distance away was like a block of houses. And as it turns out, where this grassy lot is just a couple of blocks from a house that someone in Alonzo Sellers' family lived in at the time, which is also super suspicious. So, and not only is this person that's related to Alonzo Sellers living in this block of houses, their home is actually the closest one to where the car is found. So if you were to map it out, like it's the first house that you would come across. Like if you walked from the car to the house, their house would be the first one. So it's kind of suspicious that not only is he now tied to where the body was found, but now also has connection to where the car was found. And I find that obviously super suspicious. What were your guys' thoughts on that particular development?
I just feel like if he did do it, he's like super lucky that they don't have more evidence on him, because obviously he's not like thinking things through. If he like parked her car right by that house and was in the woods right where she was, like, just seems like he got lucky that there was or that maybe there is like DNA, but they haven't like looked enough into it. But yeah, it just seems the circumstances are just so weird that he hasn't been charged if he did do it.
Was the car was the car always there? Like, I'm just confused. Like, what are they saying happened with the car? Like, it was found there? Where was it found?
Well, it was found, that's where it was found, in this grassy lot.
And they're
Like,
saying it was there for 6 to 8 weeks.
well, that was, well,
Like,
yes,
that
but then
was
there's,
what the police were saying.
yeah, the state's case was saying that it was there. And there's also been a little bit of, there's also been like controversy about that because in the Undisclosed podcast and in Rabia's book, where they kind of dive into that, there is possible things to suggest that maybe the car had been moved. And like basically the fact that the police were trying to like frame Adnan, obviously, but you know, kind of moved the car to where it was found so that they could make it fit into their theory that they wanted it to fit into, because there was a whole thing about the grass underneath the car was like still kind of fresh, or like there was like grass in the tires which was still kind of green. It wasn't like dead grass where if it had gone over the grass 8 weeks before or 6 weeks before, whatever it was like as if it had just recently been moved there. There was also like the one of the things, I don't know what it's called, but the stick inside was like dangling off as if someone had maybe taken it off and like hot wired the car to move it. So there's a lot of like questions around that. So I guess obviously if you believe that the police moved the car to frame Adnan, then that doesn't mean Alonso has anything to do with it. It's just a coincidence that it's near a place that he has a connection to. Because that was the question I had too, is like, well, do we think that the police still moved the car? Because if we do, then that discounts this whole connection with Alonzo Sellers. But if we think the car had been there for the full time, then maybe there's a little more credibility to the Alonzo Sellers piece, or at least this part of the
It just
Alonzo
seems
Sellers theory.
like why, if they have this evidence that's pointing to Alonso, why don't they just refocus and be like, "Hey, Alonso Sellers." Like, I don't they once they were dead set on him, on Adnan, they didn't even think, like, it was okay to be like, "Okay, we've got the wrong suspect, let's focus on someone else." And but they did it, like, they just kept going with Adnan until it was really too late to turn back, really. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I also think the theory that, the police moved the car seems super far-fetched. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think that they went to those lengths to frame him. I think they were just yeah, I don't know. I think they were just dead set on Adnan, and this thing about the car, I don't know. It just seems
Yeah, I don't
crazy to me.
yeah, I don't think the police touched the car.
I don't see it as far fetched. I don't know for sure, obviously, but I think there's enough, because it's like right after they found the car, it was a couple of hours after that where they arrested Adnan. That was like the last piece of the puzzle that they needed, and somehow finding it where they found it was enough proof. And they say the police's theory was that Jay led them to where the car was, because it was. And if you remember this case, it's like Jay was the acquaintance of Adnan who ended up being the state's main witness, who basically confessed that Adnan did it and that he was there and that all of this stuff. So there's but because of that, and like the timeline of their interviews with Jay, where like they say he led them to where the car was, which is where they found it in this place. Um,
Wait, so that's why the car was, like, led back to Adnan because Jay knew where it was? And they're like, "Oh, Jay knows
well,
where it is. It must have
allegedly.
been Adnan." It just seems crazy
Well,
that they
because he was
jumped
the
to
one who
that.
said, yeah, well, it was after weeks of Jay saying that, yes, Adnan confessed that he did it. I saw her body. And like the full details of like, yes, I saw the body in the trunk. And then we drove the cars, buried the body, and all of this stuff. And then the last piece
Okay.
was like, well, where's the car? And then he
And
leads
Jay knew
them
where it was.
supposedly to the
Okay.
car. There's a thought that the police actually found the car somewhere else that was unrelated and would not fit with any of the timeline that Jay described. So they had to move it to a place that would fit where that was, because they had all the cell phone evidence and the cell phone pings. And it's like, well, where the car was found didn't fit that at all. So then they found it in the slot. And yeah, so that was kind of, I think, what led to that. But then also, I guess, like I'm saying, if I believe that the police moved the vehicle, then it's not connected to Alonzo at all. It's just a coincidence that it happened to be
Well,
that. But
I wish Jay would speak up and be like, "That's not where the car was," or "Yeah, that is where I led the police to." I understand why he's, like, staying out of it, but, like, he could clear that up real quick.
yeah, and he's less than credible at this point. I feel like he's changed his stories so many times. And in the documentary, they explain how every time the police find more evidence, Jay's story changes to fit the evidence. It's like clearly the police have no
And
idea what happened, and neither does
and,
Jay.
like they bring him in at 3, and then they don't press record until 6. So it's like, what were they talking about in those hours? Like, it's so obvious that he was fed that story by the police, like,
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty wild. It's actually, and they like explain it in full detail of like exactly when his story changes, and then they map it out to be like, oh, this is exactly around the time when this new evidence came out, or when this new discovery, or whatever, right? Like, and then the cell phone evidence. I remember the cell phone evidence painted one picture, but then they found out halfway through, oh, it's actually the map is wrong. And then as soon as they found out the map was wrong, oh, then the story changed to fit the new one. It's like, well, what is it then? Like, it's just so obvious. It's so obvious what happened.
But
Um,
also, like, Jay was also super young at the time too, right? Like, he was probably trying to just make the police happy so he's not in trouble, and I wonder, like, if he was going to be interviewed, like, now, like, today, what he would say about it and, what the real story was. Because that was, you're like, well, how old was he? 17, 18? Probably scared
Yeah.
shitless that you're gonna get arrested too, so just cooperate with the cops kinda thing, so I kinda get it.
Jay's an idiot. I don't like him.
Yeah. And I think, like, there's obviously reasons why. I think he was, in a way, I mean, he was manipulated by the police too. He was a victim of the police corruption too, because they were just desperate. And they kind of used the fact that, like, oh, well, we could pin you for, like, selling marijuana or something like that. And, in order to avoid that, he instead admits to being an accessory to murder because somehow that's better. And I don't know. I don't think Jay's going to say anything now. I think he's trying to stay out of it as much as he possibly can. Do you think it's a coincidence that the car was found near Alonzo Sellers' family's, or like he has a connection to the where the car was found?
Oh yeah, I think he did it, so that's why the car's there.
And I guess he was just, like Katie said, got lucky and he was just dumb that he's going to park it in the closest spot he could find. That's like pretty much right next to family members'
I mean, like, his story from the
house.
very beginning, he obviously wasn't the smartest, like, he didn't think it through. Like, him saying he's going that far in the woods to take a piss even though he likes to put a mask on and run naked around the street. I mean, just thought, like I mean, he didn't plan anything, like, strategically, I feel.
Well, I mean, yeah, his story from day one, his story didn't line up. I think it's pretty obvious, like just in looking at like the story that he told, just had holes in it all around, I think. The motion to vacate that I said doesn't name Alonzo Sellers by name or even the other suspect by name, but it's it's clearly in the new part of the documentary, they clearly say that Alonzo Sellers is the person that at least one of the people that they're talking about. The second suspect that actually isn't named in the documentary, and I kind of wanted them to go into who the second suspect. I don't know why they chose not to, because even I think Susan Simpson, when they're talking to her, she says the first person, she's like, I'm not really concerned about. I'm focused more on this other person, Alonzo Sellers. So they kind of just brush the other one under the rug, which I think the other one has even just as much credibility or it's even more questions. So if you've been following this case, not too much through Serial, I don't think Serial really mentioned this person at all. But if you listen to Undisclosed podcast and then Rabio's book, Adnan's Story, they go into this person much more. So the second suspect is thought to be Bilal Ahmed, and he was familiar to Adnan and his family at the time of Hae's murder. So Bilal was actually Adnan's mentor at the mosque at the time of Hae's murder in January of 1999. And Bilal was actually partially responsible for procuring Adnan's defense attorney, Christina Gutierrez. So in Rabia's book, she talks about how he was kind of involved in hiring her as the defense attorney, which we all
Oh my
know
god,
was a horrible mistake
that's crazy. I never knew
because,
about this guy. He was, like, his mentor? That's crazy.
yeah, like he was, I guess, considered Adnan's mentor at the mosque. Like, I don't know if he'd be called like a family friend. I don't know if he was really a friend of he was known to the family and I think was just close to Adnan through the mosque and stuff. And yeah, partially responsible at least for getting Christina Gutierrez on board, which we all know was like, that's where they lost the case right there, was getting her, I think, or partially anyway, because she was incompetent. But he also bought the cell phone that became a central part to this case. So the AT&T phone was actually, it was in Adnan's name, but like Bilal had bought it for him and was just, he has a criminal record as well in the past. So he has been accused for sexual crimes against minors. And around the time of this case, Bilal was actually found in a compromising situation with a teenage boy. And when at the time that he was arrested for that, he had a photo of Adnan in his pocket, um, which is weird. And that was according to the police report of that incident. So he did not testify at all in Adnan's trial, which you'd think someone who's very close to Adnan could be a character witness. He spent a lot of time, and he also would have been a good witness because part of Adnan's defense was that he was at the mosque the night of the murder and that he couldn't have been in Leakin Park burying Hayes' body because he was at the mosque. And like Bilal would be someone who would know that for sure because he was always at the mosque. They were always there together. So the fact that he wasn't called as a witness was also
Yeah, but
very weird.
if he did it, then he wouldn't be able to say that Adnan was there because he wasn't there himself.
He never came out, like, even if he didn't get called to, he never went on in front of reporters and supported Adnan's innocence. Like, he never said no. Like, I never heard of this man before in my life.
Well, no, he's said that, um, he always said Adnan was innocent. Like, all of this stuff sort of wasn't really like, around the time of that, he was, like, an advocate for Adnan, he was an advocate for the family, like, he helped them hire the defense attorney and all of this stuff, so he was always saying that Adnan was innocent. But then all the other stuff, like his his criminal record and stuff wasn't public knowledge at that time, so no one really knew anything of it, but so he was saying that Adnan was innocent. Also, yeah, like I said, he did not testify in Adnan's trial, but also the reason he didn't testify was because he actually kind of went MIA around that time, like either left the country or just like left Baltimore. Like no one could find him, so he wasn't called as a witness. And one of the theories that Rabia talks about in her book, I think probably in the Undisclosed podcast as well, is like there's like speculation that he struck a deal with law enforcement so that they wouldn't charge him for these crimes that he was facing against a minor if he didn't, in return, didn't testify as a witness in Adnan's defense. So that's kind of the theory as to why he didn't testify. And so that's kind of, obviously that's never been confirmed or substantiated. It's just kind of a theory out there. Although currently Bilal is incarcerated for unrelated sexual crimes as well. So he's currently in prison. But that's the other witness, or that's the other suspect that this motion I think is referring to. And I believe Rabia also said it in like right around the time that the news came out. She said that is who the other suspect is. So like him and Alonzo Sellers are really the two top suspects. So I guess, yeah. And if you only listened to Serial, you wouldn't know anything about Bilal, I don't think, because I don't think they mention him at all or very briefly. But like I said, in her book and in the Undisclosed podcast, they talk about him a lot more. So I guess, what are your thoughts about him?
I mean, I guess, like, what would be the motive? I mean, like, when did he come across? Like, I don't understand how they would even have, like, he was just happened to be at the school that day? Like, this older man? I don't understand, like, where, like, how did he come across Hae?
Well, again, there's never like anything outlining like what the timeline would be for that or how it would happen, but there's kind of like rabbit holes or like theories online out there that say Bilal's close friendship to Adnan propelled him to kill Hae because he perceived Hae to be causing stress for Adnan, like through the breakup, and she was dating someone new, and maybe he was so close to Adnan and she had hurt Adnan. That's like one theory. Or some speculate, and this is obviously just a theory, that maybe Hae knew about some of Bilal's improprieties because if she was dating Adnan at the time, like maybe because she's closer to Adnan, she maybe spent time with Bilal. Maybe she knew something. Like, so there's also theories like maybe she became aware of some of the stuff he was doing, and I don't know if she threatened to report it or something or tell someone. That was another
I
theory
feel like
too.
I feel like that theory's not true. I feel like I mean, I know I don't think Adnan would keep that. If he knew that something so bad, like, awful about that, like, he did these, like, sexual predator against minors, I don't think he would never say anything to, like, his to an adult or something.
Well, maybe he didn't like spell it out to her like that, like saying something like that. Or maybe he didn't know. I don't know. But that was just thought. Like maybe because she was with Adnan, like she might have spent time around him, like somehow knew something or found out about something through him, or like
And it's like,
not
"Oh,
through
like,
Adnan,
you
but
wrong it's like, oh, you
yeah,
wronged Adnan, so you hurt Adnan, so I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna let Adnan take the fall for it."
yeah, but that obviously wasn't his plan. He didn't want Adnan to take the fall for it. So I'm sure obviously he didn't. That wasn't his intention. And like he
But
tried
then
to like get him a
he sure as hell
defense
didn't
attorney.
he sure as hell didn't stop it, though, when it was happening.
No, because then he would have to if he if he was involved, he's not going to implicate himself either. I don't know. But it's just a theory, so who knows if that's even if there's anything substantial to it. The documentary didn't really go into him at all. I was hoping they would, like I said, because he's highly considered to be that second
Maybe they're saving it
suspect.
for the next episode.
Maybe, but also there is also mention in the motion to vacate that one of the two suspects has allegedly like uttered threats about Hae. So said things like, I'm going to kill Hae, I'm going to make her disappear. And I'm assuming based on the information that that is Bilal. So like, but that's like secondhand information. Like someone came forward and said they heard him say that about her in the presence of another person, not like in the presence of this other person, allegedly. So this is from number 6 of the motion to vacate. So it says the parties have developed evidence regarding the possible involvement of 2 alternative suspects. References to these 2 suspects will be mentioned throughout this motion as one of the suspects. End quote. So the 2 suspects may be involved individually or may be involved together. These suspects were known persons at the time of the investigation of the case and not properly ruled out, as set forth below. In the state's reinvestigation of this matter, new information was learned about these individuals that suggests motive and or propensity to commit this crime. However, in order to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation, the names of the suspects, which suspect in particular, and the specific details and the information obtained will not be provided at this time. A person provided information to the state that one of the suspects had a motive to kill the victim, and that suspect had threatened to kill the victim in the presence of another individual. The suspect said that, quote, he would make her, Miss Lee, disappear. He would kill her, end quote. And I believe that is Bilal. I think that's who that's referring to, just my speculation. The state also located a separate document in the state's trial file in which a different person relayed information that can be viewed as a motive for that same suspect to harm the victim. Oh, and also this was information that was apparently considered a Brady violation because it was withheld from the prosecution or it was held from the defense at the time of the trial. So that's information that the prosecution or the state would have known, but they purposely didn't bring it into and let the defense know, which is a Brady violation in and of itself, which could or should have led to a mistrial, which I think does lead to mistrials in other cases. It's funny how a Brady violation can lead to a mistrial in other cases. In this one, there's so many Brady violations and none of them did. I mean, there was a mistrial initially. They had a second trial, but still not for any of these things. And then this is part B of that. So new evidence, the location of the victim's car was located directly behind the house of one of the suspect's family members. So Miss Lee's car was found parked in a grassy lot behind the 300 block of Edgewood Avenue in Baltimore City. Through investigation of property records and other media, it has been determined the location was known to one of the suspects, so Alonzo Sellers. A person related to the family owned a house on the 300 block of Edgewood Road for many years, and that person lived at that location in 1999. The state uncovered this information during an investigation in 2022. This information was not available to the defendants in his trial in 2000, and the state believes it would have provided persuasive support substantiating the defense that another person was responsible for the victim's death. And then part C. So the defense located formally documented evidence unavailable at the time of trial that one of the suspects had, without provocation or excuse, attacked a woman unknown to him while she was in her vehicle. The suspect was convicted of this offense. So that's Alonzo Sellers again. So this information was not available at the time of trial and occurred after the trial. And then also part D, so one of the suspects engaged in serial rape and sexual assault. So the state and defense have obtained credible information that one of the suspects had engaged in multiple instances of rape and sexual assault of compromised or vulnerable victims in a systematic, deliberate, and premeditated way. The suspect was convicted of this offense. So that would be Bilal, I'm assuming, based on this. This information was not available at the time of trial and occurred after the trial. However, the state finds the information relevant and worthy of further investigation now that it is assessing the possible involvement of this suspect. And one of the suspects engaged in violence against a woman known to him. And then part F is one of the suspects was improperly cleared as a suspect, which I believe is Alonzo, because he was cleared, but not properly, is my guess. So, and that goes on to talk about how he was given a second polygraph after failing the first one and all that stuff. So that's directly from the motion to vacate there. So yeah, those are the 2 kind of main suspects. And that was information that came out in 2022. It's now 2025, and there's obviously been no arrests. There's been no really other update in that. But Adnan is still free, and he has his sentence was reduced to like time served. So he isn't going to go back to prison. Like that's not a threat. At first, when he got out, it was like, would he go back if they like overrode that decision? But it has been determined that he will just go just to time served, which was 23 years. And that's also part of the Juvenile Restoration Act, which was something that came into effect in Baltimore, where people who were convicted of crimes when they were minors can have their cases or their sentences reduced to 25 years if they were a minor at the time, which obviously he was a minor at the time. So
But does that apply to, like, every crime? I mean, what if it's a super violent mass murder at 15 years old?
that doesn't mean every person who's in jail who was a minor gets released. It's like you have to. It would just. It's like something that can now allow people to file a motion to get out based on
Yeah, they, like,
the JRA.
revisit the case or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably still get a decision that would they remain in jail because of the nature of the crime. And they would also probably look at like your behavior while you're in prison and all this other stuff. But it's kind of like just another avenue people can pursue if they want to. So that's basically the two suspects. I guess I was going to ask for what are your thoughts of those two? Are you still thinking Alonzo Sellers? Obviously, these are just our opinions, but what do you think? Do you think the Bilal Ahmed, that there's any
Y
credibility to that or
Yeah, I
possibility?
don't know. I'm starting to second guess that it could be Alonso now because this random guy popped up. But I'm also, they just never even looked at Dawn again, which is just crazy to me.
Yeah. When I first heard like these other two suspects, I thought Don would be one of them because I've always found him kind of suspicious. But as far as I know and the information that's out there, I don't think that's this other suspect. I don't know. But it is kind of sketchy. Like, uh, is it Serial that they mention, or is it the documentary where he had cuts on his hand and
No, it's
his
the
timesheet
documentary.
was documentary? Yeah, and his timesheet was. They think his
And
timesheet was like forged.
his mom is the manager, like, his mom was his alibi or something?
Yeah, because his whole alibi was like he was working at this store, but then they found reason to believe that maybe that timesheet was tampered with to like make it look like he was working when he wasn't, and his mom was the manager, so she could have had motivation to do that. I don't know. That's kind of the thought, but as far as I know, Don is not considered a suspect at this time, and he was cleared
Yeah,
way
his
back then.
timesheet could have been tampered with just to make it look like he was working, and he still didn't do it, right? Because they just wanted to make it, definitely that he was
Yeah,
working.
they called it, like, could it be, like, a phantom shift or whatever they called it. Like, someone
Yeah.
someone got on the computer and punched him in when he told someone there to punch him in when he wasn't there or something.
Yeah. But that is could be like, well, I need to have an alibi even though I still didn't do it to make it really look like I didn't because I didn't. But that aside, I don't think he had anything to do with it. Bilal definitely seems like the kind of guy that could pull this off, judging from, his record and when he's done and why he's in jail. So, yeah, definitely not a good look.
Yeah, just lots of stuff in this case. Even at the very bare minimum, even if you're someone out there who thinks Adnan is guilty, you have to at least admit that he wasn't given a fair trial and that the evidence against him is loose at best. I mean, I feel like the evidence around him is all circumstantial, but like, I mean, the circumstantial evidence around Alonzo Sellers is just as convincing as Adnan's was. I mean, like, it's definitely not without a shadow of a doubt.
So you think they focused on Adnan because he was the ex-boyfriend? Or, like, why not I don't know, it's, 'cause Jay probably I'm just why not go to Don first? He's the current boyfriend.
Wait, I think
Probably
Jay had a lot
because,
to do with it, right? Because Jay was like said that Adnan confessed or something, and Jay knew stuff about where the car was, and Jay knew stuff that only someone that was like involved could know, sort of, and like the phone records, and like it was all Jay.
yeah. And also because they kind of just like they ruled out Dom because he had an alibi, allegedly. It was only like when you actually looked into it that his alibi was kind of sketchy based on the timesheet and stuff. But Adnan couldn't be accounted for that night because he didn't have any like for sure evidence that said where he was. It was just like he said he was at the mosque. But then Jay came forward and said, well, no, he was with me and he was burying Hay. So I don't know. I think it was just the fact that like same with Alonzo, like they gave him a polygraph, they ruled him out. Don, oh, he has an alibi, they ruled him out. Adnan, or he doesn't have an alibi that we can actually prove, that can be proven, we'll just blame it on him. And also, there was a lot of, they also tried to frame it too. I don't know, I think they talk about this in the documentary, but there was a big part of the state's case was the fact that like they tried to pin it as it was an honor killing because he was a Muslim and like you disown me or you embarrass me, I'm going to kill you. So there's like a big race element too. And they found it was
I
probably just an
wonder
easier argument.
I wondered if he wasn't Muslim, would they have gone so hard for him? I wonder. That's not probably
I don't
not,
think,
right?
I don't
If he
think.
was if Adnan was a white guy, it would have went differently, I think.
100%, I think.
I guess, but Bilal is also Muslim, right? And they like didn't really care about him that much. So it just seems weird that they would focus on the 17-year-old kid rather than this like guy that is like a sexual predator
I think they really took
who's
advantage of the
also
fact that,
Muslim.
like, yeah, I think they took advantage of the fact that Adnan was Muslim, Jay was black. Um, I think they was yeah, I took advantage of just the
Like
minority, like, yeah,
I don't even think I think with Bilal, like, he wasn't even someone who was even on their radar at all at the time as they were just their concern probably was that he is gonna be a good character witness for Adnan. Like, we don't want him to testify in Adnan's defense and, like, say he was at the mosque or, like, saying all of this stuff because that's gonna hurt our case. Like, I don't think at the time they thought, "Oh, there's enough evidence we could for sure pin this on him." It's like they saw there's more evidence to pin it on Adnan, so we'll just do that. It's only now,
Right.
like, in
Yeah.
retrospect that there's, like, more question about that
And it was
because
probably
also
easier that Adnan was only 17, right? Way easier to manipulate him and Jay. So I guess that was an avenue that they took advantage of.
maybe they were hoping they could get a false confession out of Adnan. They never did, but they got a false confession out of Jay, I guess. I don't know. So, yeah. But, yeah, it's just crazy. I know when I think about this case now, I just get all mad again, even though, like but it's still considered a unsolved case because obviously Adnan didn't do it, so who did? There's still no one in jail for Hayes' murder. And I also find it sad too that, like, Hayes' family is, like, so adamant because they're not really gonna, like they don't wanna think about this case anymore, and they have to. So they're just gonna and they obviously you have a lot of trust, like, probably in the police. You're like, "Okay." I don't think they're gonna really question it. They don't wanna question it because I think it's also too hard for them to think that someone else who wasn't involved went
yeah.
to jail.
I always think this, and then until I'm in that, I hope I'm never in that position. But it's like they're so adamant that the right person's in jail, even if there's evidence saying there isn't. Like, why not be like, okay, maybe the wrong person is in jail? Like, why are they? You see these victim families a lot of the time so adamant that the police got it right when it's proof that they didn't, and they're just, I find that like when you want to know for sure, like I don't understand, but
Like,
I
wouldn't
guess
you
you don't
want the
until
right person
yeah,
to be in jail?
like I don't understand why they're so adamant that that person stay in, even if it's proven that he didn't do it. I mean, that makes me I mean, when the Hayes family was, like, trying to fight against it, it just made me so angry. I feel bad for them, but it's like, why wouldn't you wanna know for sure?
Yeah, I think I don't know. Part of it too is, like, maybe they just I don't know. Like, they don't even wanna even fathom, like, they've kinda made their peace with it and just assumed Adnan did it years ago. They don't wanna even, like, have to think about it. The fact that the person who actually did it is still out there somewhere.
Yeah, like they probably really think he did it, just like how we really think that he didn't, and we're like, "There's no way he did." They are like, "There's no way he didn't do it." So and then once you're like in that mindset, it's like hard to I think get out of it. So, and for them, it's just like they had their closure, their peace with it, and now that's going to be ripped up again. So I think it's just be hard.
Yeah, and I highly doubt they're gonna take the time to, like, do a deep dive into the case and listen to the other podcast, listen to like, read the Rabia's book on it. Like, I doubt they're doing that. Whereas where they're gonna hear all of the counter information about why he didn't do it, like, they're just gonna stick with the state's theory because I don't think they're gonna take the time to I don't know. Even though you think they would want the right person. 'Cause now you think of the fact, like, now the person's been out for 23 years. I mean, unless it was Bilal, and he's in prison anyway, but not for this. So, I don't know. And also, and at the end of the documentary, it does say because the reason there was also, like, new items that were tested that had never been tested back then, and there was DNA testing that was done that excluded Adnan on some of the items that they tested, and they're like, "Based on excluding him, we can release him, and we feel there's not enough evidence to keep him in prison." Um, but then at the end of the documentary, there was other stuff that they were planning to test, and it turns out they still haven't tested. As of May 2025, the law enforcement still hasn't tested some of these particular items, which could say a lot, but they don't have any motivation to do that, I guess. I don't know.
It seems
'Cause
crazy that they wouldn't just test it. Didn't they specifically like they told the lab not to test like, even when this was going on, they told the lab not to test the DNA, which is crazy. Like, why? Just test it, see what it says.
I'm just happy he got out before while both his parents were still alive. Like,
I
I was very
know,
happy about that.
I know, because like they both weren't doing well, like health wise, around the time. And I remember like right after he got released, like Robbie was posting a lot of videos of like him, like just doing like basic tasks, like looking through the fridge at the house and like all the stuff. I don't know. I just loved watching that stuff because it's like you follow the case and you don't actually ever think. Because I don't know. I feel like through this blog, I'm just used to injustice everywhere. Like nothing ever. I don't know. There's just corruption everywhere. But the fact that he actually got out and then like just watching him do like basic things that wouldn't be interesting to watch anyone else like looking through their fridge in their kitchen, but like just watching after
Yeah,
like
like the
23 years
freedom to
and
choose what you're gonna eat, like, and eat when
yeah.
you want.
I think Robbie said she's trying to be convincing him to try, or she's tried to convince him to start a podcast, but he doesn't doesn't seem to have any interest in that, at least now. But I'm like, so many people have podcasts. I'm like, oh my god, another person. But like, he's someone I actually would want to start the podcast. Like, please, I want to hear because I mean, they do interview him in the documentary and stuff, and you hear his words, but not the specifics. But I guess maybe he also wants to move on too. But
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I
maybe
don't know.
he eventually will, but he probably just, like, wants to leave that part of his life alone for a little bit. Like, he's been living it every day for, like, 25 years, so maybe just give it a rest for a little bit.
Yeah, and like maybe he'll put out a statement when they do find out who actually killed her, if they ever do. But maybe that will be what the time when he decides to put out a statement, so he can finally be like, for all those people who still think that I did it. So that'd be nice. That would feel so good to just like be able to say that, like fuck you, all the other people.
I was always like so impressed, like even like the interviews during Serial and stuff, like just how well spoken he was and how like calm he was about everything. He never like cursed any of like he never talked bad about. He was just such a which he handled it so maturely for someone who was the 20. He never once expressed anger towards anybody. I just found that you don't see that very often. Like he spoke very well. He's very articulate. I don't know. He was very I just really like him. I think I really like listening to he just carried himself so well throughout all of it. Being 18, 17 years old, like, yeah, I was very impressed by that.
I'm more angry than him, it seems. Like, I'm angry every time I talk about this case. It's just annoying because it's like he was 17 and now he's in his 40s. He lost all those years, 23 years. Um, but also what I found in that documentary too was like how emotional he got and said that he felt bad for the people still in all his friends still in prison.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, like the fact that he even thinks of them and he just really is such a genuine good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, how he's saying it's, like, bittersweet, right? Because he doesn't get to see these people that he's seen, like, every day and talk to every day for over 20 years. So that yeah, that's gonna be definitely a rough transition. But yeah, you can tell just how much he cared about them and yeah, just like a good person despite everything.
Yeah. And I felt so happy for his parents and his brother. Like all those people who probably, I mean, you always have hope, but I'm sure they never really thought. And because even his brother says it like feels like a dream. It doesn't feel like this is really happening. So, and like that video, like I said, I keep going back to the fridge one, but like his brother
When
showing him like all this stuff in the
he's
fridge,
opening
like
the fridge, he's like, "This is
yeah,
flavored soda water." Or he's like, "This is flavored" like, all these new things that have come out in the 20 like, all the new drinks and stuff, and, he starts digging in right away. I would too. I'd eat everything in that fridge.
yeah, he's had to eat like prison food for 23 years. It's crazy. And I know there was like other posts around the time Robbie was doing of like he was learning how to use an iPhone for the first time because like obviously 99 or 2000 none of that existed. Like even the internet was in its early stages. Like it's just crazy. Anyway, so he's been out for 3 years now. So which kind of feels crazy. It's been 3 years already, but yeah. So I want to say it's like justice in this case, but not fully because the real person who did it is still out there and knows they did it and isn't really.
It's also crazy that, like, they have a history of convicting people and then they end up getting out of jail because they did you know what I mean? Like, end up rushing to convict people, and he's never been, like, reprimanded or, like, fired for that. Like, get him off the force.
I
Yeah,
know.
that seems crazy. Not just once, but, like, multiple times.
Yeah. Like, why would you want someone like that on your police force? Like, just get rid of I mean, I'm sure maybe he's retired by now, but And also fuck the defense attorney too. She was corrupt and horrible too. Saw the mistakes she made. Like, yeah, I recently actually just reread Robbie's book on it because it's a really good read. But I also knew we were going to be doing this one at some point, so I just wanted to refresh her. But like, she goes in on the defense attorney, like just so pissed. Like all the stuff she did, like not contacting Asia McLean, like the alibi witness, like but told Adnan she did. She's like, oh yeah, we we talked with her and we found out she had the wrong day. She actually didn't reach out to her at all. Just lied to him. Like just horrible. Anyway, that's it for our update on this case. So we hope you enjoyed listening to our takes on it. So we highly recommend you watch the newly released fifth part of the Case Against Adnan Syed docuseries on HBO if you haven't already, and go back and listen to our coverage of this case or Serial or any of the other podcasts out there because there's so much to this case. But that is going to do it for our coverage now. And if there is ever an update, further updates on, because I think the focus of this after Serial was like, we just want to get Adnan released. Like, we want him, like, free Adnan. But now that he's out, it's like, now we need to move to actually finding out who did this. So if there ever is an update, more updates on maybe. I feel like they're right there. They just have to want to test the stuff. Like, the stuff is there. I think it's solvable. There's stuff out there that can,
I'm hoping, you know how you always hear like years later a new detective gets promoted, and no, it takes one good guy to be like, I'm looking into this more. So I have hope that one good cop will walk through the Baltimore police office and
yeah.
do something.
I think it's safe to say that Adnan would not be out right now if it wasn't for Marilyn Mosby, that the state's attorney, who was kind of determined. Like, she knew she was going to be out of office soon. She was just determined to, like, as one of her last things, to like get Adnan out, or like to not even just get Adnan out, but like just get to the bottom of like whether he can still. Because she was, I think, obviously she was trying to stay as impartial as possible, right? Like, she just wanted the right person to be in jail or like to find evidence. But the fact, yeah. So I think her fighting for it. So it also shows you that, like, who you put in for like these attorney positions when you elect them. Because like if she had, like, just think of that night, if she didn't win that election and get in that position, he could still be in jail right now. So it's kind of crazy. But yeah, that does it for our coverage of this case. So you can follow us on social media, Crime Family Podcast on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. Email us at crimefamilypodcast@gmail.com for case suggestions or feedback or anything like that. If you do have theories or tips, please don't give them to us though. We've had sometimes people do that. They come to us with a tip. It's like, no, don't do that. Go to law enforcement if you have tips on any case. So hope you enjoyed our coverage of this. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. So until then, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.